Hi, Miguel here, back with another revisit to Pokémon Adventures. Today we are doing Volume 5, and if you're wondering why I'm not slapping the book, it's because I lent it to my best friend after I was done with it. So, yeah. By the way, speaking of which, there are quite a few people who are on this channel who actually were who came over here from my best friend's fan fiction, her Naruto fan fiction, Spirit of a Triage. And after I finish reading Naruto all the way through, I intend to go over to fanfiction.net and read her fanfiction because I've heard it's very good. She has a great number of good reviews, and she's my best friend. I'm kind of obliged to read it. So anyway, for those of you Naruto fans who basically know what I'm talking about, thank you so much. I hope you're enjoying what I have so far. And if you if you are a Naruto fan, if you've read all the books and you're interested in reading her fanfiction, check it out. It's called Spirit of a Triage, and I'm hoping you like it. So anyway, enough Naruto. Let's talk about Pokemon. So there's a lot to unpack in this volume. A lot goes on in this volume. A lot of really, really, really interesting things. First off, like the first few rounds of the volume is basically Yellow training with Blue, and this I think is like a really big highlight in the arc so far, because Yellow and Blue's approaches to Pokemon are so very different. Yellow doesn't want to hurt anyone, and apparently she doesn't want to evolve her Pokemon either, because when she develops that bond with them, she gets to know them. She gets to know how their appearance, and that helps her to bond with them, apparently. I actually come to think of it, it's not really well explained, but it's still interesting, because again, Blue's approach is training Pokemon to reach their full potential. So and especially now that he's lost to Red and he wants another rematch with Red, so he wants to continue training his Pokemon to become stronger and stronger, and that includes evolution. So when Yellow actually breaks down after her Rattata evolves, Blue is like, this has got to be a practical joke, I've never met a trainer who doesn't want her Pokemon to evolve. By the way, it's a she. I think I mentioned that last video, that I already know that Yellow is a she. It's not been revealed yet, but again, I've been through this manga before. I'm just revisiting it. But anyway, so yeah. And it turns out, by the way, this is another very clever implementation of a feature from the games that made it into the manga. So Yellow's Pokédex, or Red's Pokédex rather, has the ability to stop a Pokemon from evolving, similar to when you press the B button in the games, then you stop your Pokemon from evolving. So it's an interesting implementation of that mechanic, but it plays into the story pretty well in that we see Yellow's Pokemon are growing in levels. They're gaining, they're getting stronger, but Yellow doesn't want them to evolve, so she stops them from evolving. And I know where this payoff kind of goes, so yeah, I won't give too much away, but I know that this is going to pay off really, really well in the end. So yeah, and Yellow now obtains a Caterpie. Her name is Kitty. There's a really, really adorable segment between Kitty and Pika, in which they bond, and Pika gets Kitty some food, Yellow gets Kitty some food, and it's a really cute segment. I don't mind little deviations from the main storyline, especially when it's adorable as that. So another thing that I forgot to mention in the previous video, is that this manga so far has had some pretty heavy environmental themes, and what I really love about this is that it's not like in-your-face environmental theming. You have Team Rocket, who deliberately ignores the needs of Pokemon in order to make a profit. And here the environmental theming is really starting to amp up, because Blue, at one point Blue looks at the wasteland and he was like, there was some plant life here. Was there something from the factory region that caused all this plant life to die out? And of course it's interesting because later on we meet the leader of the Elite Four, Lance, and his stance on that on the deteriorating environment in the Pokemon world. And we'll get to that in a second. First, we got to get through Blue and Yellow. Yellow has been improving so far. Blue sees Yellow's healing abilities, and Yellow decides she has to continue going off on her own because she feels that she might become too dependent. Blue is still very worried that Yellow might not be able to save Red, or, that she might end up not being too much of a help. So Yellow goes off in the SS Anne, which has been now refurbished to be a cruise ship once again. You remember, anyone who read the first arc, the Red, Blue, and Green, that the SS Anne was actually taken over by Lieutenant Surge and used as a smuggling vessel to take Pokemon to Team Rocket's laboratories throughout the region. And now it's been converted back to a cruise ship. That said, Team Rocket does attack in kind of a reminiscence of the sinking ship. They sabotage the engine, and Yellow actually has to fight them on the rocking ship. And it's interesting to see it's interesting to see how Team Rocket uses the sinking ship as leverage to attack, and also how Yellow turns the tables onto them due to utilizing the sinking ship to her own advantage. But even then, when Yellow shows her full team, even with the gym leader's Pokemon, the Ammonite and the Graveler that Brock and Misty gave Yellow, it's very... The Team Rocket takes one look at the Pokemon that Yellow has, and they're like, you're really going to take us down with those? And ultimately Yellow does, but it does bring up a good point. Yellow's team is very, very weak. I mean, it's been training a lot, and Yellow knows how to use them, but, especially when compared to, like, Red and Blue and Green, all of these trainers with really powerful Pokemon and a team that is able to synchronize really, really well, Yellow's team doesn't look like much, and, doesn't have much going for them, ultimately. But Yellow is able to outsmart them, and that's one of the things that I really like about Yellow. Despite her team's relative disadvantage in terms of raw strength, she makes up for it with a very clever way of battling, and, making sure that no Pokemon gets hurt. Ultimately, she is able to, kind of put Team Rocket in a very vulnerable position and force them to surrender so that she doesn't have to hurt them, ultimately, which is clever, very, very clever. And I kind of know where this goes. I kind of know, the Team Rocket's relevance to the arc as a whole. And, it's an interesting distraction, but I think ultimately it's a little bit too much of a distraction. And I know, it kind of pays off later a little bit, very tiny amount, but I don't think the payoff is very good, and I'll talk about that in a later video when I enter future volumes of Yellow. And another thing, I think this is a bit of a missed opportunity, in my opinion, because, Pokemon Yellow, the game, being based on the anime, and, featuring Jesse, James, and Meowth, why not make these three Team Rocket, higher-ups? Why don't you let them be Jesse, James, and Meowth? It'd be a fun little cameo. It would certainly make the distraction a little more interesting. But, a bit of a missed opportunity there. But, you gotta judge them. You gotta judge the manga for what it is rather than what it could be. And for what it is, it's fine. That little distraction there. From there, we enter another interesting implementation of an element from the games, the Surfing Pikachu, that was, unique to Pokemon Yellow, and actually was implemented in later games as well, with the Surfing Pikachu that Lieutenant Surge trades to you in Heart Gold and Soul Silver, Pikachu's surfing ability in Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee. And the way they explain it is really interesting. Basically, Pikachu uses Substitute to... And the substitute can be formed into a surfboard that basically repels the water. So Yellow can use it as a surfboard, Pikachu can now use Surf because of that clever utilization of Substitute. That said, it does kind of take away like a quarter of your health, which is a bit of a bit of a pity. And I don't remember much about the future volumes, but I'm beginning to wonder if there's a moment where that caveat to Pikachu's Surf ability is used. And now Yellow has a Pokemon who can use Surf. She had Omanyte, but you can't surf on an Omanyte. I'm not sure if you can in the games. I think you can in the games, but like in Pokemon Adventures, it's shown to be very much not reliable, very much not useful. It doesn't work in real life because Omanyte's too small. So Yellow uses that actually. And initially she had intended to try and compete for a Dragonair who was able to surf, and she did so by entering a competition in Vermilion City. And this is where we get introduced to this arc's main villain, the leader of the Elite Four, Lance, the dragon trainer himself. And we start to see what exactly this entire plot has been about. Lorelei trying to capture Pikachu, Agatha and the power plant, Bruno basically, taking care of Red. Lance is plotting to annihilate humanity, to make a world in which Pokemon can live in peace, because he believes that Pokemon and humans cannot coexist. And this kind of goes into the environmental the environmental message that Pokemon Adventures has been pushing up to this point, because now that we've seen the impact that humanity has had on Pokemon in this world, we see Lance, who, the typical villain for an environmental message is a person who does not care about the environment, only cares about making a profit, or, kind of like Giovanni, except Giovanni is a little more interesting than, like the Onceler in the Lorax, or the main villain of Avatar, for instance. But we have Lance, who takes an interesting stance. He actually is on the side of the environment here. But he has a very radical approach in which you have to eliminate humanity in order for nature to exist peacefully. Of course, our stance on, the protection of nature and environmental protection in this case becomes not so much, oh, you gotta, take care of nature and such, but, now it becomes coexistence. That's what we're fighting for. No longer, just for nature, but also for humanity. It's an interesting take on this environmental message that's been done so many times. And so Lance appears. It turns out that the Dragonite that was supposed to be the prize for the competition actually belongs to him. So he demonstrates his power, his Dragonair's ability to control the weather, soar through the air, all these different things that Yellow attempts to take him down, and it's a very drawn out battle. It's a very epic battle, and I'm very satisfied by it. Yellow basically Yellow attempts to fight Lance as much as she can, and of course she brings out her Pokemon once again, and Lance is like, "You're really gonna fight me with that?" Yellow's team isn't very impressive, and Yellow refuses to make them more impressive by evolving them, which is interesting, and it's really impeding her ability to battle effectively. But her wit and her ability to think through battles, actually very similar to Red, come to think of it, helps her, helps her win against Lance. And actually, she manages to, I think, down Lance into the ocean, and she assumes that he's dead, but of course we know Lance isn't dead. You can't take Lance down that easily. We now know Lance's plot. We now have seen him in action, and we are ready to see what else the Elite Four has planned. Speaking of the Elite Four, we now go to Cinnabar Island, where Blaine has been training. Another nod. This one actually is a bit of a nod to the anime instead of the games. Blaine... When we first encounter Blaine on Cinnabar Island, he is training with Mewtwo, whom you will recall was captured by Blaine due to them being bonded. Blaine having inserted some of his own cells into Mewtwo. And we don't recognize him at first. He has a different appearance. And this is actually his appearance from the anime that was not implemented in Pokemon Yellow. So when Blaine invites Yellow back to his lab, he removes the disguise, puts on a fake mustache because he burnt his real one in a training accident, which is hilarious, I gotta say. And yeah, he invites Yellow in, and he takes off his disguise. And it's a very nice nod to the anime. I wish they had more nods to the anime, especially in this arc. But you know what? I'll take what I can get. That was a very fun Easter egg. And he says that they've actually managed to locate the hideout of the Elite Four on Sea Rise Island. Not something that wasn't in the games or in the anime, but you know, it's an isolated place that Blaine and Yellow plan to go to finally confront the Elite Four. And Red's shell has actually been found by Brock up in Mount Moon. Apparently he was encased in ice, but someone has broken him out. Again, I love the gradual revelation of Red's state in this arc. I love, you know, the mystery surrounding it and how they continually provide more and more clues as to where Red is, how he's doing, and and how they're going to find him. You know. So something I really liked, and I mentioned in the last video, and I continue to like. But Brock's investigation in Mount Moon is cut short when his city, Pewter City, Cerulean City, and Celadon City are all attacked by armies of Pokemon who all correspond to a specific Pokemon typing, or a Pokemon that one of the Elite Four would use. We have Gengar and Haunter, Machop, Cloyster, and Shelder, all attacking different cities. And so that basically cuts Brock's investigation short. So we also have... I don't know if you can hear my dog barking outside. I'm sorry about that. But yeah, and we also have a little bit, we see Green finally. Green finally makes her reappearance. We know that she's been helping Yellow out from behind the scenes, and she finally enters the scene once again, breaking and entering into Bill's house so that she can access his data to find out if Red withdrew any of his Pokemon. Because now that Pika's gone, Red would want to replace Pika, if he's still alive, with another Pokemon. And after some little, like, she has to convince Bill a little bit to let him to do it, because it's against the law to, you know, to peruse through another trainer's personal information. But Bill eventually consents, and he finds out that recently Red actually took Eevee from the PC, which lines up with Yellow's theory that it might have been Red who took the Firestone, Waterstone, and Thunderstone from the bottom of Vermilion City's harbor. By the way, I forgot to talk about that. So the person in charge of the Pokemon fan club in Vermilion City tells Yellow to search underwater for any clues that he remembers that Red's Poliwhirl, when Red had when saving Red from drowning after being thrown from the SSN by Lieutenant Surge, evolved into a Poliwrath in order to save him. Well, Poliwhirl can only evolve into a Poliwrath via a Waterstone, so he's thinking maybe that there was a Waterstone, and specifically a mythical Waterstone, lying in the bottom of Vermilion Harbor, along with a Firestone and a Thunderstone. So if Yellow can find them, maybe she can really power up her Pokemon. Well, Yellow dives into the bottom of the ocean. She gets met by a bunch of Tentacool and Tentacruel, who ask her to help out this one Tentacool who was stuck under a boulder. After all that's finished, they lead her to that sanctuary where the stones are located, and she finds that the Fire, Water, and Thunderstones are missing. The Leaf Stone's still there, but the Fire, Water, and Thunderstones specifically are missing. And Yellow thinks, like, oh, you know, no one Pokemon can use all three stones. There is one Pokemon who can use all three stones, that's Eevee, and one person who has an Eevee is Red. So now that we've seen that Red actually did take Eevee from the PC, it makes it a lot more plausible that it was him who took the stones. But before they can find out anything else, they're actually attacked by Bruno's Hitmonlee. And I don't remember if this was... I don't remember if this was in this volume. I remember reading this a long time ago when I first read this as a kid. Green actually uses... no, I don't think this happened in this volume, so I'm going to talk about it next video. Don't Don't let me forget. But anyway, so yeah, we're moving to Sea Rise Island next volume. We're gonna face off with the Elite Four. The cities are under attack by the forces of the Elite Four, so we're assuming that Lance is probably isolated on Sea Rise Island. There are a lot of interesting distractions, a lot of interesting, like, world building, we see the effects of both humanity's, mistreatment of the Pokemon world and the environment in which they live, and the Elite Four's intention to completely annihilate humanity. We see the side effects of both of these. There's a little episode with a Farfetch'd that was interesting, and of course, there's a bit in which Mankey, completely starved of their food source, actually attack Yellow and Blue. We see it's little tidbits of world building here and there that make it so good. The Team Rocket distraction was, a little bit unnecessary, but ultimately I think I think it doesn't detract too much from the story. So yeah, great volume, a lot going on, and surprisingly the pacing doesn't seem too bad. Like in the first three volumes I mentioned, first two rather, the pacing was really bad because they tried to pack so much stuff into these two volumes. Despite the fact that there's so much going on, it still feels good. It still feels like there's just enough time spent on each incident individually that you can really feel that, Pokemon Adventures is really starting to regain its footing with regards to its pacing. So yeah, that's all I have to say about Volume 5. And yeah, if you liked it, please stay tuned. I have more coming up. And if you're interested, check out my Naruto series that's ongoing every other day. And yeah, stay tuned for next time on Volume 6, and I will see you then.